Altagracia, Pierre-Outerbridge with us. Some important news regarding Airbnbs, and we welcome her to the program. Good to have you. Good to have you here. And, listen, there is some news that we have to be in tune with regarding the rental industry. No one better than you providing it. Of course, Outerbridge Law. Altagracia, give us the lowdown here regarding renters and what we need to know about these Airbnbs. Go ahead. Welcome.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So Airbnb has long plagued the city. If you're looking at it from the perspective of landlords and hotels, it has long plagued the city. And there are clearly two perspectives, that of landlords and hotels and that of day-to-day New York City renters who may want to make a buck for whatever to meet their financial circumstances, right? In terms of the landlords and the and the hotel lobby, it plagues the city in that it puts tenants, occupants, in situations where they may not be safe, and more importantly to the landlord, right? The landlord would usually get fined for what they call illegal occupancy. Furthermore, folks in Airbnb, that's still according to the landlords and the hotel lobby, folks in Airbnb in regular apartments that are not meant for hosting are facing fire hazards, right, and all kinds of bad situations that should not be there. And financially for the landlord, it means for the landlord that the tenant may be likely making a profit on the rent, right? And the landlord obviously would rather make that profit, or the hotel lobby would rather make that profit. So it has many facets, right? The financial facet is huge. Not only is the landlord usually not making the profit on the apartment that they want to make the profit on. They don't want the tenant to profit. They want themselves to profit, right? The landlord usually gets fined if the Airbnb is discovered, and it often is, by the other building residents, right? Building residents hate Airbnb. They usually report it. Then you have a landlord who's upset because they are facing fines, right? They have to enter into litigation to get rid of the tenant who has Airbnb'd, right? And they also didn't make the profit that the tenant has pocketed. So it makes landlords very, very angry, and some building residents very upset as well.
So, I mean, that's a lot of apartments when you think about it. You know, you're looking at, 12,000 short-term rentals as of recent nature, I was reading about here, and frequently booked on Airbnb, and they may be illegal. This is according to the city. Mm-hmm. Because you can't rent out a whole unit for less than 30 days. It must be at the unit for the person's stay. I mean, that's pretty, it can get a little complicated, I would think, in that regard, as far as the definition, no?
Absolutely. So what it's supposed to do is to deter Airbnb hosts, right? Because they then have to stay in the unit, right? And they have to extend the term. They have to extend the term of the guest, right? So it's preventing transient hosting, in that that person essentially becomes your roommate. And if you're doing Airbnb, that's not quite what you want. You want in and out, and you want a quick buck.
That is unbelievable. So, I mean, you're looking at 52 prospective hosts that have applied to legally register to list their unit, and 12,000 or so of these short-term rentals that might be illegal. So, in essence, what's the crackdown here? How are they going to crack down on all these people who have illegal type units, Altagracia, as far as really, making a statement to them? How is that going to happen in a timely period?
Well, I mean, it's been around for a long time, right? Airbnb's been, plaguing the city, right, for a very long time. How do they crack down on it? I'm often in court on either side defending a tenant who has Airbnb'd, or prosecuting a tenant who has Airbnb. So it usually spills out in the housing court system, where there's an eviction proceeding started for violation of lease terms, right? And Airbnb, we call it not curable, right? Because once you Airbnb, then your lease, you can't quite cure it. Even though you can remove the guest, once you've done it, the courts really see it as you probably will lose your tenancy, right? So it usually spills out in the court system. in terms of what can happen, the landlords usually get massive fines, right? The landlords usually get massive fines, which they then turn to the tenants to pay, right? I've seen them be $20,000, $30,000 in terms of fines. So this is usually what happens. I've also seen vacate orders put on apartments, right? I.e., everyone has to vacate, right? But usually it leads to the loss of the actual tenancy of the person who rented.
Going to spread out into other areas like Long Island, everywhere else. These laws will be in place.
Absolutely. Like, this is not a New York City thing. It's a New York State. So rental laws are statewide. They're not citywide. They're statewide. It happens to be that New York City is more condensed in terms of has more rental units is more condensed. So you see the problem more. But yes, absolutely. I don't think, however, you would see the problem in a private home. It's really a problem endemic to buildings, right? Right. So it's not. Long Island would have less of a problem because of the way that it is built, which is a lot of homes.
Do we know the extent of the fines of what they will be handed out to?
Well, again, I've seen 20, 30K of fines, and I'm always shocked. I can't tell you a number right now, but I'm always shocked as what the fines will be. And usually it's fines over days, right? So even if the fines are 1,000, let's say 1,000, it's usually over the number of days. So all of a sudden it's 22 grand as opposed to 1 grand because it fines each instance, right? I cannot tell you a number, but it's always been massive when I've seen it because it fines each instance of the conduct.
So if you're a landlord here, you better follow the protocol as far as what you need to do to register properly. That's really the bottom line here, correct?
Correct. And what that does is it actually tells the city that you're not a part of whatever nonsense is going to be happening in terms of Airbnb. So the landlords who register their buildings as such, it helps the city, if there's Airbnb in that building, it helps the city, right, or the state, right, know that anything happening in that building that's Airbnb should be flagged because the landlord has registered it as no Airbnb, right? So that usually flags out the tenants who are violating right then and there. The thing about Airbnb is every other tenant is usually very upset, right? So as much as folks do it on the undercover, usually 100% of the building is upset, right? That the tenant is doing that. Because folks say that they feel unsafe once they see folks moving in and out of different apartments. Usually it's families wanting to know who their neighbors are, right? So usually it doesn't last long because your neighbors will tell on you.
Oh, they sure will. I can just imagine. That's good information, important information from New York-based attorney Altagracia, Pierre-Outerbridge, certainly expert on landlord-tenant litigation and transactional matters like no one else. Very important stuff regarding these Airbnbs. Appreciate it, my dear. You stay well. Till next time.
Thank you so much.
You got it.